Oh well, that's usually the timer. Um, I don't know. This is this is never easy. Never ever easy. Have I got audio this time though? That is the big question. Audio, not peaking, bringing it in. The intro wasn't working then for some reason. Let's see if this works. No, of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. Teething issues. At least I'm here this week. I wasn't even here last week. I feel like I'm probably peaking. Audio. Something. That's why. How's that? That's better? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. One day I might actually be good at this. Doubt it's ever. Kind of doubtful it's ever going to happen. Yeah, I even set up a nice little thing so you could see the book top down. But I'm literally waving my hand in front of it at the moment and nothing's happening. It's like on some serious delayed reaction. At least you can see that the book is In Praise of Shadows, and it's taken me so long to set this live stream up because I thought I'd do something extra and do something fancy that I can't for the life of me remember what I'm going to talk about to do with In Praise of Shadows. I'm only kidding. I do know. I remember well. So, In Praise of Shadows is a book that was recommended to me when I was studying my masters, and it actually sparked a lot of creativity. I'm gonna just get rid of this little rig. Yeah, I had my phone set up so that it was like a little wireless camera, so I could have it set up over here. It was all good, and that was an hour ago that I started futzing about with this. This went from like an afternoon chat about books to this is like a book at bedtime at the moment. I hope you understand that I overcome my nerves by just babbling on. So, feel free to launch into the chat and tell me that I'm chatting shit, because I may well be doing that. 6 people watching, that is a record high. Yeah, so the book, In Praise of Shadows, it's by Junichiro Tanizaki, and basically it's a series of musings, a bit of a stream of consciousness about Japanese design versus Western design, and in particular, how we handle light and dark. And as I said, I read this book a couple of times. We're talking about 4 or 5 years ago now. 4 years ago, 5 years, something like that. And it hit me at a time when I feel like I really needed it. Let's bring that light down a bit. Bring that light down. Is that a bit better? It hit me at a time that I really felt like I needed it. And this is why I wanted to talk about this book, because I just read it again. Just bought it. I felt like I needed it in my life. I've bought it a couple of times because I've lost a couple of these, which is a theme of my book reading life. And yeah, so read it a couple of times. Really got so much from it, and on the most recent rereading of it, I didn't enjoy it as much. And I think maybe given another 2-3 years, I go back to it. It's one of those that I might enjoy again. I mean, look at it. You know, pick it up for yourself, give it a read. It's 2 sittings, 1 sitting if you're really interested in just getting through it. As I said, stream of consciousness, which is basically what these videos are, these live streams. Oh, I've lost one. No, I've lost 3. Oh, that's a shame. See you later, guys. It does take a while for me to get into these reviews. Last time, I was just getting to my stride when I realised that someone like flagged up that I wasn't even didn't even have any audio. In fact, if I sit back like that, I won't have any audio today either. Anyone want to let me know in the comments if my audio actually sounds any good? If you're just tuning in for the first time, this is only the 3rd live stream I've done. You'll know it. This setup is a weird, janky setup. I don't even know how to show. How would I show you? Let's take a picture of this. You may not be able to see that very well, but this is basically what I'm recording on. This is my nana's sort of expensive splurge when it she bought it for herself basically to record like memories of the family, and through whatever reasons, you know, she went into a home a little while ago. She's very unwell, and that's kind of why I pulled this camera out, and I really wanted to use it because it's like this connection there to something from the past. Segue. Yeah, so that's why you've got the you can see like the stop and stuff like that. That's not like a filter that I'm putting on. I just ended up using this, and I quite like using it. I use it a couple of times now. But yes, a look into the past. This is not a new book. This was the original Japanese version, was written somewhere around, probably around, let me see if it's in here. Ooh. Well, he was born 101 years before I was, so he was born in 1886. Didn't really get started until 1923, which was I was kind of glad reading that, because that means that maybe I've got until like 2022, 2024, somewhere around there, to actually kick off my career in a big way. So this was written in the sort of early 1900s, maybe 19. I can't find the exact year on here for some reason. This is research that I should have done beforehand, isn't it? This translation's from 1977. I think it was. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to find it here. It's, yeah, I don't know. He wrote a lot from 1923 to 1961, 64. He died in 1965. So yeah, not a new book. What is it actually about? Well, I keep saying this, a stream of consciousness. It's a sort of series of short essays kind of merged together. And he talks about, let me just read the very first bit. What incredible pains the fancier of traditional architecture must take when he sets out to build a house in pure Japanese style, striving somehow to make electric wires, gas pipes, and water lines harmonize with the austerity of Japanese rooms. Even someone who has never built a house for himself must sense this when he visits a tea house, a restaurant, or an inn. For the solitary eccentric, it is another matter. He can ignore the blessings of scientific civilization and retreat to some forsaken corner of the countryside. But a man who has a family and lives in the city cannot turn his back on the necessities of modern life. heating, electric, lights, sanitary facilities, merely for the sake of doing things the Japanese way. The purist must rack his brain over the placement of a single telephone, hiding it behind the staircase or in a corner of the hallway, wherever he thinks it may, wherever he thinks it will least offend the eye. He may bury the wires rather than hang them in the garden, hide the switches in a closet or cupboard, run the cords behind a folding screen. Yet for all his ingenuity, his efforts often impress us as nervous, fussy, excessively contrived. So he starts off talking about how Japanese design, Japanese architecture is designed in such a way that it doesn't make room for modern, at his time, mid 19th century, mid 20th century, sorry. Was I saying 19th that whole time? No one corrected me on that. Just jump into the comments. Last week we had a guy that was just putting Z's. I think he was really bored. Either really bored or just really loved the way I was reading and, it was putting him to sleep. Went up to 6 again, back down to 3. Is it really bad to comment on how many people are watching? I feel like it is. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not au fait with live stream culture just yet. I don't know what I was going to say. So he goes on about how and we've just lost another person because that. So he goes on to talk about how not only is it difficult to implement modern features in Japanese style because it comes across as contrived if you try and hide it, and it comes across as ugly if you try and show it. He also talks a lot about how Western culture tries to overly light things, shines too much light onto, the bathroom in particular is what he talks about, and he talks about these wooden sort of ancient style of Japanese bathrooms. I don't know a lot about this. I've never been to Japan. I tried to do some research and look into it and see what these things look like, but I was kind of unsure. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine who just spent a couple of weeks in Japan over Christmas, and he was talking about the saunas and things like that, and it got me really wanting to go. It got me wanting to go more than this book does anyway. The other thing he talks about is, so in Praise of Shadows, he talks about how Japanese culture, design, around this time, I don't know what it's like now, it was very much designed to sort of highlight the tiny, tiny glints of gold that you might get in a room because the sunlight really didn't penetrate that much. And on first second reading, back when I was studying photography as an MA, I really took that on board quite a lot. And I think I took that on board because I was looking at architecture, I was looking at architectural photography, sort of minimal brutalist architecture. And when you're looking at something in the terms of photography, you're looking at dark and light. And one of the other things he talks about in here is pottery and Japanese pottery and lacquerware. And so I actually worked with a friend of mine, a friend who recommended this to me. She did some slip casting of ceramics, and I followed her through this process, and then using the large format camera I took some photos, and it was all very much based on this. She was very into this as well, and so we worked a lot around it. And I think for me, and it goes a long way to showing how books aren't a fixed thing, we got so much from this, and actually really love this book because of the work that we produced after reading it. And actually, I was watching a video today by Nerdwriter. If you don't know who that is, I highly suggest you go on YouTube and search Nerdwriter1 or Nerdwriter. He'll definitely come up. He does video essays on really diverse, interesting topics. He does a lot more coherent ones than I do. But oh my god, he does a lot more coherent videos about things than I do about books. Jesus Christ, that was hard to get out. And the one I watched today was about world building. And I've never seen any Game of Thrones, but he talked about the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, the books, not the film so much, and how there's kind of a contract between the author and the reader that you, as a reader, you take on a lot of the responsibility for building that world. And Japan isn't a made-up world, obviously, but it is a world that I've not seen other than in pictures. And so this book on first reading built this world in my head, and since then I've learned more about Japan. I'm very, very interested in Japanese culture. I think it's an incredible culture to look at from an English point of view, because we are both small island nations, quite overly populated for our size. So it's really interesting to look at how they've dealt with issues that we share in common, issues that we have in common, should I say. And I think this review is less about an actual review of this book and more just a musing on why we read books and why certain books really strike a chord, and how, as I say, you are responsible for a lot of the enjoyment you get from a book. It's not passive like watching a film. Watching a film or playing a game, everything's given to you. And reading a book, it's just not. And that's why I think it's so important to read books. I'm again this year. I'm trying to read at least one a week. I'm just over that. I think I'm on 5 at the moment, so that's about right. And I'm just going to pick out a couple more passages from this book, because you came here for the book review. You didn't come here to hear me chat on about why you should read books. A Japanese room might be likened to an ink wash painting, the paper-panelled shoji being the expanse where the ink is thinnest and the alcove where it is darkest. Whenever you see the alcove of a tastefully built Japanese room, you marvel at your comprehension of the secrets of shadows, our sensitive use of shadows and light. For the beauty of the alcove is not the work of some clever device. An empty space is marked off with plain wood and plain walls, so that the light drawn into it forms dim shadows within emptiness. There is nothing more, and yet when we gaze into the darkness that gathers behind the crossbeam, across the flower vase, beneath the shelves, though we know perfectly well it is mere shadow, we are overcome with the feeling that in this small corner of the atmosphere there reigns complete and utter silence. That here in the darkness, the darkness's immutable tranquility holds. Well, I can't read. Let's go back. That here in the darkness, immutable tranquility holds sway. The mysterious Orient of which Westerners speak probably refers to the uncanny silence of these dark places. And even we as children would feel an inexpressible chill as we peered into the depths of an alcove to which the sunlight has never penetrated. Where lies the key to this mystery? Ultimately, it is the magic of shadows. As with the last couple of books, I went on to Goodreads and just really wanted to see what other people said about this. And a lot of people found it racist. And I think I understand what they mean. He talks about sort of cultural differences, and these reviews, I tried to look at where they were from, but they seemed to be reviews from Westerners, and they're talking about him being racist against, or using racist terminology to describe Japanese, the Japanese people, and Japanese sort of subcultures. And I am not. You can see quite plainly I am English of Irish descent, and I'm not Japanese, so I can't really talk to that. But I don't think you can call him out for that, and that was one of the big criticisms of it. My main criticism of it is that it's motivational, and this is the thing that I try to read books that motivate me. It's motivational in that it gives you a different thing to think about, a different way of thinking about why we should overly light stuff. And actually, I used this in my last video, just for one shot. The last video that I properly put out, just for one shot, I tried to use like darkness instead of light to really show what I'm talking about. And basically, I was sort of doing a meditation pose at the very like intro to the video, and I had this in mind, this book in mind, and it does really make you think about the difference between using light to tell a story and using darkness to tell a story. And if you're not into photography, if you're not into video, if you maybe not into film, you might not. That might just seem a little bit like, what are you on about? But for someone who's really into photography and film, when I think about shadows and I think about him, he's talking about the eaves of a Japanese building, and they're there because the walls are made of paper, so the eaves had to stick out a lot, and so the sun could only get in when it was very low, and he talks about this. And in my head, one of the things that I was really thinking about, and it's funny because Potato Jet, another YouTube channel that, again, you should probably check him out if you're into filmmaking, he just did a lighting video, and he talked about this particular lighting setup, and it's the top-down lighting setup that is using The Godfather, and it's basically using the character's brow as this kind of eave to cast shadows, just completely obscuring their eyes. And it's a powerful thing, shadow, because taking away someone's eyes especially means that you get the impression that this person is a shady character, that they operate in the shadows, even though they're stood in a lit room. Because of the way it's lit, it's the shadows telling the story there. The light is incidental. The light is only there to help the shadow tell the story. Would I recommend you read this book? Well, I'm gonna give it a. I'm gonna go for 62%. So I work on a percent scale here because I don't like 5.5 stars. No, 5.5. It would be like 4.5 stars. I don't like that. So I'm gonna go. I go for percentage. So yeah, it's better than not reading it. I think if you've got any interest in Japanese culture, this is a very good starting off point because it's not if you're interested in contemporary Japanese culture, it's probably not the book for you. But if you're interested in kind of turn of the century, mid-century design, mid-century sort of minimalism, and I think this book is a really interesting juxtaposition to the Western mid-century trends. So yeah, I would recommend it, and it's like £6 on Amazon. It's a really short read, and I think for me it's going to be a jumping off point now to not only some of his other books, but some other sort of Japanese authors from a similar time. I think there's some sensibilities that we can take from these guys. So yeah, I recommend it. The next book that I'm going to do, I did say about doing a giveaway. I'm not going to give this one away because I've really been struggling to hold on to a copy of this. The next book that I'm going to give away, or the next book that I'm going to do, I am going to give away. The next book, you may have seen already in the description, is The Singer's Gun. And it's by probably my favourite contemporary fiction author. And she's called Emily St. John. Bear with me one second. Emily St. John Mandel. I first read one of her books, good couple of years ago now, called Station 11. One of my all-time favourite books. Absolutely love it. Read it a few times now. Got the audiobook, listened to that quite a few times. Then I got another book. So Station 11 is a sort of post-apocalyptic travel story, similar to The Road, but not quite as bleak, and just really well written. And I kind of assumed that her next book would be some sort of sci-fi or something like that. It wasn't. It's the next book that I read, should I say, was Last Night in Montreal. Fantastic. Just really, really love her writing in that. And so I picked up The Singer's Gun just recently, and I'm most of the way through it. I'll save my opinions on it for next time. But if you want to read that beforehand, join in with the comments. As it would seem no one's done today. Not even that troll guy from the other week. If you want to get involved next time, read the book beforehand. If you've already read it, let me know in the comments, and we can hopefully have a little discussion. That's kind of what I want the end of these videos to be. A little bit of discussion. I'm probably going to pick someone from the discussion next time to I don't know how I'm going to do the giveaway actually. Like the cynical part of me is like, you need to get everyone to like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram and all that sort of stuff, which would be really lovely if you did that. But I think the way I'd really like is whoever's like in the comments, I'll either pick them out at random or I'll choose my favorite comment or something like that. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. This took me so long to do that it's really late. I've got to get up really early tomorrow. So that's going to be the end of it for me. And this, I'm just looking, and this is like the most people who have tuned in so far. So really appreciate anyone who's watched. I love the feedback. This is you probably just like tuned in and like, oh fuck's sake, this guy's rambling to fuck. Well, I'm sorry. I may always be filming on this Canon camcorder from the mid-90s. I may not. I just got a lot more character than my other cameras, so maybe I'm not going to upgrade. You're just going to have to let me know what you think about the crap that's on screen. Where is it? There. I don't know how to get that off. I don't know. Right. Seriously rambling now. Need to get some sleep. I will see you on another time. Well, hopefully you'll see my video that goes out this week, and then I'll see you a live stream next